Hello everybody, we have a game with the black pieces on our speed run against Mowgli from the Jungle Book, 1584. We have a French on the board as white tries to take the center. He pushes the pawn, we now have an advanced French variation. We play c5 to undermine the pawn on d4 to break down white's center. White should support his center with a pawn, creating a strong pawn chain. But he does not do that. With this guy's 1600 though, he hangs his bishop in one move? What? Okay, new opponent. Now that's free elo if I've ever seen it. Okay, we have another game on our speed run. The black pieces, and once again we get a French against the 1600. Hopefully this guy does not blunder his bishop in one move. Okay, so we got the same thing. Do not play bishop g5 here. I will log off. Okay, so we get the pawn chain. Much more normal move. So we develop a knight and try to continue to undermine the pawn chain. He develops his bishop to protect the pawn, but the drawback of this move is it undefends the b2 pawn. I'm going to play queen b6, which puts further pressure on the center and hits the undefended pawn. So he auto plays b3, protecting the pawn and weakening the dark squares around the pawn. So if you take, he's going to take with the pawn, and then the pawn's not hanging, but you will have bishop b4 check there. And since he can't go knight c3 because the knight would hang, he has to put a piece on d2, and that's not optimal because he would like to go knight c3. If I make this capture, once he takes back, one of the benefits of white taking back with the pawn is it opens up that square for the knight. But because he played b3, now if I go bishop here, his knight can't go here. But if the pawn was back at home and I played bishop here, his knight would be defended by that pawn. So now when I give this check, his knight would be undefended, so something has to go here on d2. And so it could be problematic. If you put the knight, then you're blocking the vision on this pawn from the queen. There's also bishop in here. So instead he blocks with the bishop. This undefends the pawn in the center, so it's hanging. So we have the option of taking with the queen. If he takes our bishop, not only can he recapture, but his rook. Let's take this pawn. And now we broke down his center successfully, which is the whole point of the French advance. Like playing c5, you're just trying to break down these two pawns and play based off that. And that's what the whole game plan revolves around. So now that we've managed to take this pawn, weakening the e5 pawn is a consequence of that. And so his center collapses. And that's why when you play white from, on the white side of a French, you have to be very careful how you develop your minor pieces, exactly where to defend those central pawns so you don't run into problems like this. So he takes our bishop. If you go to take the rook, I mean, you could do that. Your queen's not trapped. You could also take the bishop. You could also take the pawn. You could also take the queen, then take the bishop. Everything's winning. I don't necessarily care about playing the most winning line here. So in that case, I'm going to take the second central pawn with check. So just so, what's the right way to phrase this? Just as a reference point, he has one of my pieces, a bishop, and I have two central pawns, right? So even if I didn't get anything else, like even if I couldn't take this rook in the corner, or even if I don't get my bishop back, right? And this is all I get, two central pawns and most of his stuff on the back rank. That's, you can play that as black. That's totally a playable position, for 3 results. So it's good to know that black has absolutely compensation for the bishop in a position like this. However, in this case, we do also have the hanging pieces, which makes it totally crushing. So I don't know why I want to take the bishop so much more than the rook. The rook's just like in the corner doing nothing. The bishop at least is controlling stuff. Um, I'm going to take the bishop. I'm not saying it's subjectively best, but I definitely am going to take the bishop and just leave my queen centralized. And now he has no pieces developed except one that's pinned. So this just looks a lot more juicy. Okay, so now he develops the knight, which protects the rook and defends this square. So it's something. And maybe looks here. Okay, we do want a castle ASAP. So if we just develop our knight and he tries to jump in, the square is actually covered and our king will be gone. So let's just bring out our knight, nice and easy. Okay, he develops a knight, tempoing the queen. Fine, we have to move it, but we might as well get the turn back. So let's throw in this check. I doubt he wants the queen trade when we're up 2 central pawns, and he'll probably just move his king. Maybe he'll bring the knight back. Our queen is walking into another tempo, but that's okay. Okay, so he moves his king, so now he can no longer castle. This almost traps the queen, funnily enough. But then we have this hitting the knight, so once our king is safe, it won't matter what he does. Because if the king's not in danger, we're always just winning in all the lines. So right now we just have these 2 extra pawns in the center, E and D, and his king is a lot worse, can't castle. So we go into this little hole because our queen is almost trapped, but this comes with double threat on the knight and the pawn. So that's nice. We have a future for this knight. Okay, so he moves the knight. What does it threaten? Just some dark square infiltration, but nothing that matters. You could take this pawn, but I don't want to be greedy. I want to develop. So I'm going to bring out my bishop to its only available square and attack the knight and connect my rooks. This pawn's not going anywhere, and if he can't go here to try to trap my queen because the knight covers it, maybe he can kick my knight first, then I hit the rook, then he goes here, then this pawn hangs. So he goes a4, protecting the knight, but I don't mind trades since I'm up material. Also, it's kind of a waste of a move, so I don't mind to see it, since he should be fixing his king situation and the rook so he can complete development. But instead he doesn't, so I'm going to keep developing. I mean, you could play a6, and if he jumps in here, it's a weird square. So I think I'm going to take the knight because my bishop is terrible. I mean, it's pretty bad behind its own pawns, and that knight could go to d5, which would prevent a rook from going to c8. I mean, go to d6. It's weird. I'm already up material. Just take that off the board. He takes with the pawn, which I thought he was going to take with the bishop to get some activity. And now I can bring in my rook. And now I'm threatening to win his rook because it's double hit. So now I have control over the c file with 3 pieces. And so he moves away and hits my queen. The downside of this is now I have even better control over the c file. And I'm just going to do this simple queen offer. Since I'm up 2 central pawns, he takes. You can take either way, but you want to activate your rook. It's a more active move. You do walk into certain tempi, well, not this one, but like the knight one, which improves his piece. But you can move your rook actively, in his position. You can kick the knight at some point. And this knight is nice here because it's an outpost, because it can never be kicked by anything. He has a light square bishop, so it's a nice little home here for the time being. So he creates a cubbyhole for his king because you have to connect the rooks. However, my rook is pinning his king down to this bishop, so that's annoying for him. We could definitely bring in our last piece and just threaten trades, just activate our army. And you could see how I didn't really touch the pawns after the beginning, right? It's still in this nice structure, and I'm just moving the pieces. So he moves the knight, which hits the rook, which is what I had mentioned earlier. But like I said, you can move the rook into his position in an active square and get the turn back. This also helps me in the sense that if I do get rid of this knight, that allows me to double for free, because he made a move that made my rook zigzag. So now I can double because of that, right? Okay, so he defends the knight with an X-ray. That's fair. I'm just going to take the rook because I'm up a bunch of stuff, and it creates this alignment which lets me put my second rook to the back, creating more problems. So he immediately gets out of the pin, protects his bishop. This is good stuff. Fine. Could improve this knight. I like that. The other knight's in a good spot. The rook's in a good spot. You could improve the king, but that's too slow for this position with this many pieces on the board still. I say we go here, threaten this, make sure his king can't go towards the rook, improve the knight, because what's it doing here at this point in the game? It needs to be further up. And so now he can't move the bishop because of the rook. He can't move the king. So he does this move because he's almost out of legal moves that make sense. So he hits the knight, but this falls into this tactic, which hits the king and double hits the bishop. So he moves closer. So now I can get free trades, which is nice. What else do we have here? We have, let's see. If we take the bishop, he takes the rook. We take, he takes. Okay, it's just a winning endgame. What else is there? Maybe you could keep the pin, funnily enough, with something like knight here. Everything's defended, but what's the point of that? Yeah, there is no point. Just trade everything into a winning endgame. You know it's 100% winning. There should be no reason to not go into it. And this is the exact moment when you should be improving your king. Not moving this knight, not moving the pawns, the king. Having said that, if you have good knight jumps that can win pawns, you can also do that. But okay, so he's attacking our knight, which almost looks trapped, but a5 protects the knight, and if you're en passant, you escape backwards. Okay, so he pushes past. Now my knight's just here forever, I guess. But he opens up a square for his knight. Maybe that's his idea. But unfortunately, I get my king in. And when he goes here, I get it in further. And now this pawn is hanging. He can try to get behind my pawns, but then when I push one, he has to try to attack another. If I push that, he has to try to attack the other. And like, that's why knights are so clunky. Okay, so he goes back, which I wasn't expecting. I thought the whole idea was to get behind me to try to harass my pawns. But in this position, I just can get a free pawn, go back, and then try to queen. Which makes my life a lot easier with 2 on this side, a 2-on-1. So now I bring my king forward. I'm ignoring what he's doing. Notice I'm not pushing these pawns. How many of you would just launch him? So he's still doing pawn pushes, but this is a pawn minority, so it's not like he's going to get a queen, right? I have more pawns here than him. And now I can just, well, let's go here. It threatens to win the knight, go to a better square. The knight's kind of stuck here. I mean, it's boxing his king in a little, but what's it really doing there? So he avoids the trade, but that lets us go here and do a double attack. So he can never push to protect the pawn in this scenario because he loses the other one. This is exactly the perfect way for a knight to attack pawn so that it's not clunky, or, I mean, it's still clunky because even after you take one here, you can never get to the other two anytime soon. So it's clunky, but this is like the best way to use it. You still win a pawn at least. So he pushes this pawn, but that just liquidates his pawns on that side of the board, which doesn't matter to me at all. And now I'm just going to push my pawns. Okay, he's giving me a check. I'm just going to go back and defend. He takes, but this is more trades what I'm looking for. Because the more passed pawns I have, the more a knight is completely useless. At least the rook can, you know, go back and forth. So, okay, he's just moving his knight around. Let's push on this side to confuse him. That's a weird move, but okay. Let's go here so we can create a passed pawn. Okay, he takes the pawn. But that allows me to do this. And I wasn't going to push my central pawn because, you know, his stuff's blockading it. So that was just going to sit there all game anyway. I was going to push the ones I'm pushing now. So let's do it. I don't know why he's moving his knight here. I guess he's going to blockade with that and try to stop everything else with his king, which of course can never work because you only need 2 connected passers to overwhelm a king. I have 3 and a knight, so. But he is playing on the clock. I did just hit under a minute, and I suppose it's mess upable. Not really, but let's get the knight out of the way of our pawns so we can support it. Let's go back here so he can't go back to the same square, and then we can push cleanly. We want to push the furthest pawn because that's what's gonna make his pieces take a detour, or the biggest detour. All right. And he just can't stop everything because he doesn't have any pieces. I mean, he could take stuff, but if I get a queen, I mean. Not resigning is, I mean, a little crazy. So now I'll just push here since he's going with his king the other way, showing him, hey guy, you can never actually leave this cubbyhole. And you could win this a number of ways. You don't have to do what I'm doing. You could use your knight and pawns. You don't even need the king. You can win on the left. You can win on the right. Doesn't matter. We just go here. And now we cut off the file, right, to box him in. We decrease the size of the box with a knight's move away. And we just make the box smaller, smaller. Put the rat in his cage. He has no choice but to go in the box. And now wherever he goes, you get a second rank. You get to go from the 3rd rank control to 2nd rank control. Right? And then you bring your king in. And that's checkmate. Cool. So now we're above 1600. 75 move game though, so that was nice, right? It wasn't a 10 move, 20 move game. 75's a lot. So we hit him with the French. So this is just an attempt to deconstruct white center in a safe way without there being lots of tactics. So we play c5 and just break it down, center. And the center's closed, so you're not going to have any crazy development. That's why you can make many more pawn moves. Because you can't get to the other guy's king anytime soon because there's stuff in the way. So we develop a piece in center. Develop a piece center and threats. And then here, I'm going to click analysis board. Oops. Even something like b3, and it looks totally normal. But, holy moly, I didn't know it was that crazy. I mean, I knew it was really good for black because of what I did. Oh yeah, I guess that doesn't make sense. Oh yeah, it's minus 2.1. I was thinking it would be like 1 point something, but I guess it's the same. Yeah, so anyway, you make this weakness, and that immediately allows us to tear down his center, right? Because the whole point of this center with white is to take with this pawn and create a strong center. So he does that, but the whole point of waiting to develop your knight is to put it here, which you can't do anymore because of b3. And so now he's in a tough spot. Knight d2 they want, but that allows you to hit the central pawn and the rook, so that's not good. Not good at all. So anyway, we do this, and he tries to go this way, but stuff hangs either way. Um, so it's just free stuff, and then from here you kind of just want to consolidate and not lose the game. Even if you're just up this one pawn, if you can run and consolidate, you should be fine and winning. But here there's another pawn, a rook. So here, I mean, you can take whatever you want. I know I didn't play the best. I specifically chose not to play the best. But what does the engine even say? Okay, well, throwing in the check is going to be best because it's a check. But then you're supposed to... Oh, really? Oh, it is. You do get trapped. Okay, so I did play the best. You have to take the bishop. I thought that if he goes here and here, your queen does get out, but he takes your rook. Yeah, your queen isn't trapped, but he takes this rook. I missed that. That's funny. See, my brain knew to take the active bishop. It just, I looked at this and I'm like, this bishop's cutting off my king's diagonal. I have no dark squared bishop. Oh, let me take these off. Oh, they didn't disappear. Anyway, you know, he has this one active piece staring into my position. I don't have the dark square bishop. So if I want to castle, I'm thinking I have to put my knight here in castle when I really want to put it on f6, but then I can't castle. So it just instinctively I like taking the bishop and putting my knight here. It just looked a lot cleaner. Or what was I used a word or a phrase when I said it. Not cleaner. It's juicier, something like that. Yeah, you can just tell. But in this situation, it happens to actually be the only move, +5. Anything else, white's not winning, but it becomes equal because you get a rook, but he gets a rook, and then you just play the game again. So that's pretty funny. Okay, so we went down the right line because we're geniuses, and then we just develop and try to castle as quick as possible, quickly. He hits our queen, so it's a forced move. You might as well get the turn back with the check. And added bonus, if he blocks with the queen, we would love the queen trade. That would make life super easy. So instead he loses castling rights, which that's not good. Can't be right. Maybe he should have put the knight back. Hard to say. So we just castle and now we're done. Our position is perfect. We just need to touch the pieces, develop, double the rooks. That would be your game plan. You know, like if someone said, what's your next 3 moves as black, forgetting about white, you're going to do that. But then he hits our queen, so forced move. Then he jumps in and you don't get scared, we just develop, right? We don't hit the knight and encourage him to even improve it further. We instead improve our position, which with the bishop development. Then he wastes time on pawn moves when he should be securing his king or something. So we take the knight, simplification. That way he has no pressure, no pieces looking inside our position, right? We took the bishop that was on this diagonal. We took the knight that was looking here. And now the only thing left that's looking in is the rook. And now we're neutralizing it. Boom. So everything he's trying to pressure in our position, we get rid of those pieces, right? And now he's getting more passive. But then we kind of forced the issue. And now who's active? Look where our rook is, right? His rook had to go to the side. We bullied him. Beautiful position. And you don't need to even have a plan. Everything speaks for itself. You're naturally going to put the rook here. You can attack pawns with it. It goes this way. This one goes this way. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Forced move. But we get the turn back. Again, trades are good for us. And look at this. If you're in a position like this, your instinct should be rook c1. Right? Now, I'm not saying it's always the best move, but that should be the first move you see, want to make, look at, and then you look, you look at other moves to see what you have. But so, I mean, I made this because it looks like the most logical active move. And then, I mean, you could try to do stuff with pawns, but that seems kind of wrong. It feels like you should just do what you can with these pieces until you should get him so active that he's forced to trade them off, and then you could play with king pawn. So I improve it with threats. He goes here. We throw in this check, trying to get the free trades. And now I called it a blunder, but it's not a blunder like he's losing a piece. It's a blunder as in he's blundering the trade. Like I get to trade the rook and the minor piece, and all that's left is the knight. One pair of knight, one knight each, and that's just game over. Like, you could just resign. There's nothing to do there. There's no counterplay. You're down two pawns. You have double isolated, and my structure's perfect, so your knight actually can never get behind and do anything. Because my base pawns are protected and I don't have weaknesses. So that's what I meant by blunder. In this case, so we forced the trades, and now his king is back rank, and we just run up the board. Yeah, I mean, you could probably kick his knight around and stuff, but a lot of times when you try to do that, you're going to create weaknesses. You're going to start undefending pawns. He's going to hop his knight around, and eventually you're going to mess up. He's going to take some pawns when you could have been using those turns to move your king to the center, which is, he can never take your king, you know? So you move your king closer, and then it's forced move. The knight can go here technically, but then after he goes here, you have to go back. So you're really forced to defend it, which is fine. He goes here, and now it's a new target for us, one that's reachable by our king. So we just go and eat it for free, and that makes our life easy. We want our king centralized. We can even put it here, get it to this side of the board. But I decided to reroute my knight because it's no longer really putting in work. Like, why is it here? So I'm improving it, obviously, with threats. So it's for free. It allows this. So it's all just, you know, in harmony, coming together. And then this wins a pawn because he can't defend. He can defend backwards. He didn't try that, though. That would have let me just push my pawns like this, which is what I would have done. So he just gave up the pawn, but of course it's losing. Trades are good for us. And now, even if you blunder like a fork, where he forks your king and a pawn, who cares? You're up 4 pawns. His knight, even if they were lined up perfectly in the exact order a knight can take them, it would still take him 4 turns to equalize material if you don't defend or push them. Like, if you just let him do it, it would still take him 4 turns. So let's say you give him those 4 turns and just run your pawn up, like one of your past pawns up the board. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like, can he afford to give, you know, to take 4 turns to do that? That's a lot, 4. And that's, again, assuming you don't just move it out of the way, which you could. Okay, so this was just, we have extra pawns, we need to create passed pawns and push. So you could take a bunch of turns like moving the knight, eating these, and then do it, create passed pawns that way, but I just decided just push, have so many pawns, just push them and trade them that way. Because if he doesn't respond, you can just keep pushing. So, oh yeah, this is a check. So force move, he takes, we take. He's trying to be tricky, but we have too many pawns here. So we push, we now have a passer here, we push 1. You could have pushed it again, but instead, I know I'm going to need 2 passers anyway, so I create a second one here. We give him this pawn because we don't care. We finally take his last pawn, but for free, because it comes with a check. Like, normally I was going to push my pawn and just create the passer, but because this comes with check, it's so free and it's fast, so I do it this way. And that way, I don't even have to trade a pair of pawns, so. And then you shouldn't need instruction in this position. Just push this pawn and this pawn, this pawn and this pawn, this pawn and this pawn. Just push 1 on each side. Ta-da. Okay. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully you're getting a better understanding of the French and how important it is to attack the center or maintain it. And submit your rapid games in Discord and I will review them. Goodbye. Good luck in your chess.